Hello, and welcome to the closing press conference of the 2024 IEA Ministerial Meeting and 50th anniversary. I'm Jethro Mullen, head of the IEA's communications team, and I'm joined today by the two co-chairs of the IEA Ministerial Meeting, Ireland's Minister for Environment, Climate and Communications, Eamon Ryan, and France's Industry and Energy Minister, Roland Lescure, and by IEA Executive Director, Dr. Fatih Birol. So during today's event, our three speakers will each make some brief opening remarks about the outcomes of the past 2 days, and then we'll have time to take questions from journalists. We have journalists here in the room and also many others taking part virtually in the Zoom. And for those journalists taking part in the Zoom, we invite you to send your questions via the Q&A function in the Zoom. You can do this at any point, and we look forward to your questions. With that, I'll hand over to Minister Eamon Ryan of Ireland.
Thank you very much indeed, and very honoured to be able to co-chair with our French colleagues this 50th anniversary ministerial meeting of the IEA. And I think it's been very successful. It's gone really well and has been an important stepping stone in the path to the transition we now know we need to make. 50 years ago, this agency was set up to provide security, energy security for our people. And the question I think we have to ask is, what's the key definition of security and energy security today? And I think our communique, which we agreed this morning, answers that well. In Article 20, I said this to our earlier meeting, we underscore again that energy and climate security are inextricably linked and emphasise that clean energy transitions ensure energy security. That's our key goal. Is to develop this alternative, renewable, clean, energy-efficient system that provides security for all our people. We've just come from a meeting of the family, various different accession countries, applicant countries, associate countries, as well as the 31 now members. We account for 80% of global energy consumption. And my closing words at that event was that we cannot divide on climate. We cannot afford a trade war in this leap we need to make towards energy security. We cannot leave behind particularly the emerging and developing countries that to date have been frozen out from the clean energy revolution that is taking hold across the world. And we have to think at scale. Fatih and his team have done an incredible job in recent years, not just in broadening the IEA, but also working with other international organisations. You look at what happened last year, Fatih working on G7, G20 to set those tripling of renewables and doubling of efficiency targets, which we then delivered in Dubai. Well, we need to do the same today. We need to go into the G7, which Italy runs, and the G20, which Brazil does, and the UN General Assembly this September. So we go to Baku in November, but critically the following year to Brazil, and we combine clear nationally declared contributions with financing mechanisms that can deliver this transition for all our people. I want to refer just to two other articles which give detail of the mandate we're giving Fatih and where we see this future lies. This is agreed by 31 of the best, I would say, energy ministers around the world. In Article 9, recognising if we are to heed the science, then no new unabated coal plant should be built. And no new long lead time conventional oil and gas projects are required. That's the wording from Dubai, transitioning away from fossil fuels, set into more precise language. Similarly, we've got this twin task now, to phase out, transition away from fossil fuels, but also to build at scale the alternative. And again, in Article 4, agreed by us this morning, we know from the data that the IEA presented that we need to be spending 4.5 trillion a year at the end of this decade to make this leap. And 2.2 to 2.8 trillion of that has to be going to the emerging and developing countries because we have to make sure everyone is part of this transition. Doing that increases all our security because we will have diverse sources of supply, because we will have reduced conflict, because we will have less forced migration, because we will improve the health of our people. An important direction of where the IEA is going is the next two meetings. The first will be on the 14th of May, when we address the issue of clean cooking and access to energy in that way. the 600 million people in Africa and hundreds of millions in other countries who are currently threatened by the lack of access. And then at the end of May, we go to Nairobi to look at efficiency in that context. That's what's significant about this ministerial. The broadening of the family, the clear new sense of direction as to what energy security means, and we've absolutely determined we now have to deliver this one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Ryan. I now pass the floor to Minister Lescure of France for your opening remarks.
Merci. Je vais parler en français et au fond.
Thank you. I'm sure he's speaking French, but my impression will be that I've been translating into French what Eamon's just said, because he said everything and he said it very well. So I'll simply add a few words. First of all, the IEA is 50 years young
Et que, évidemment,
this year, and given the IEA's success over the last 50 years to, first of all, ensure security of supply, also create a group of member states and an enlarged family of states working together towards common goals, and also, this is important, produce rich, useful data, which is an evidence base, an objective basis for discussing these issues in an informed manner. All that will continue. But in addition, we'll have this exceptional mission. 50 years ago, the idea was to create access to hydrocarbons for everyone. Now, what we want to use less and less hydrocarbons. We'll have less and less need thereof, and therefore move increasingly towards clean energy. Eamon, you said this very well. The communique covers all the necessary topics. Now our teams have to start working on that. Our teams, the IEA's teams, those who've worked on the draft of the communique, which was unanimously adopted this morning. The 31 IEA member states will soon be 32 member states, because we have assented to Latvia's request for accession. They simply have to go through the formal process for adoption to join the family, and we can look back on 50 years of success, but look forward to the next 50 years as well. Our change in energy generation, our ability to understand that polluting energy actually costs more than simply their base cost. They cost the planet something. They cost pollution, and we have to include these negative externalities in their prices, so that when investors invest in such energies, they will know precisely what the cost of them is. At the same time, we need to stress the value there is in investing in decarbonised energy, so that, as we say, the externalities are well understood by financial players. The reason I say this is because public money is in short supply nowadays, but private sector money is something we need more and more. And therefore, the capability of investors to actually fully understand, incorporate the genuine, full value of what they're investing in is vital if we have to get the transition going across the world, whether in Asia, Africa, or in Latin America.
Sans parler du nucléaire.
Speaking as a French national, I have to, of course, mention nuclear energy, which has been mentioned for the first time in a communique. Of course, there are different views around the table. Some member states are convinced that it's an important basis going forward in the energy transition, but others not. In any case, last but not least, thank you very much, Fatih, as an Executive General. We look forward to the next 50 years of the IEA working together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Lescure. And with that excellent introduction, I will pass the microphone to Dr. Birol, our Executive Director.
So thank you very much. May I first thank to both of the great ministers. They are both great, as you see. So we are so fortunate at this juncture of the energy and climate issues, global issues, having two wonderful ministers chairing our ministerial meeting, and at a special meeting at the 50th anniversary. Many thanks, Mr. Minister. Many thanks, Mr. Minister. And also to your government leaders, to President Macron, who sent a wonderful video message, and also to Prime Minister Varadkar for sending another very good message. Dear colleagues, this was an outstanding ministerial meeting for at least two reasons. One, the participation. We had just come from a lunch. It was a good family lunch, we call it. Around the table, 80% of global energy use was represented. You cannot find it anywhere. 80% of the global energy use was represented and discussed in a like-minded way global energy and climate issues. So from that point of view, plus having a very good dialogue chaired by Mr. Minister with the industry, oil industry, gas industry, renewables, the IT, startups, a discussion was of unique importance in my view. So this was the first part, which was, in my view, outstanding, the participation, representation of the entire global energy sector. The second one is the outcomes. Some of the outcomes are, in my view, of revolutionary nature. First of all, I would say that our governments decided to take a very important step, which will, in my view, change the international energy governance for once and forever. A few months ago, the Indian government requested a full membership of the IEA, signed by the Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, and we have discussed this with our governments for a long time, and we have decided, as it is seen in our communiqué, that we gave a positive response, that we are starting the journey for the discussions for India to be a full member at the end of this journey. The second important, in my view, outcome is that our governments decided, working together with the government of Singapore, to open our very first center outside of Paris, a regional center for cooperation for Asia-Pacific region, so that we are going to be present in Asia-Pacific region. This was the second important outcome in my view. Third, as you all know, we are an oil and in general gas and energy security organization. 50 years ago, it was the main reason that we were founded. And our ministers, led by the chairs here, gave us the mandate to look after a looming energy security challenge, which is the critical minerals, inspired by our oil supply security mechanism, for which we have a lot of experience, starting a new critical minerals security program to provide a safety net for this very important issue. Fourth, I would say that our governments made clear that the climate change leading the energy world's fight against climate change is a priority for them. And therefore, they have tasked the IEA to lead the global clean energy transition, and they have given us several mandates in that direction. There are many other first times, and one of them is Minister Leskur just mentioned. For the first time, there was a full paragraph on the recognition of nuclear power to address the energy security and climate change issues. So we are very keen to make the most out of this mandates, to work together with all the governments who have participated in this meeting, together with the energy industry and investors. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. So we now have time for questions. I think we will start with questions in the room for the journalists who are here with us at the Ministerial. I see a few hands being raised, and we have some microphones. So maybe this person in the front row, whose hand shot up before Dr. Birol had even finished speaking, I think.
Yes, I knew why.
And do please...
I will introduce myself.
Perfect.
Hello, gentlemen only. I'm Cornelia from the Austrian Broadcaster. Thank you very much for having us here, and I have plenty of questions on this very long meeting you had. First of all, how much are we on track concerning energy security after you have met, Director? And then I have a super long question. Nuclear. As you know, the country almost better than I know where I'm from, and which is a very, very, well, they don't really like nuclear, and they hear now for the first time nuclear has more than a paragraph. What's your take on phasing out in Germany, the nuclear exit in Germany? What do you think about countries who are in principle against this technology? Can these countries actually ever meet the net zero targets? Or is nuclear not also very expensive and it takes extremely long time to set it up? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And maybe we'll just take one or two other questions from the room. I see someone in the red sweater.
Thank you. Rosemary Griffin from S&P Global Commodity Insights. It's a question about OPEC. You've criticized OPEC Plus in the past for its production cuts, and it seems quite committed to that policy for now. Are they still contributing to the risks of recession? And have you discussed oil markets with the OPEC Secretary General or the Saudi Arabian Energy Minister recently?
Thank you very much. And maybe one more. Hortense, I see there's a gentleman there. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question about the U.S. elections. Obviously, the U.S. is a key partner for the IEA. Obviously, the possible election of Donald Trump, do you think that could at all change the emphasis that the IEA has around climate, given ex-President Trump's views on climate?
Thanks very much. And sorry, could you just identify yourself?
Noah Brenner with Energy Intelligence.
Thank you, Noah. So maybe I'll let our executive director begin. There's quite a few questions to go through, and then allow the ministers to weigh in as they prefer.
So I can perhaps start with the question about nuclear power, and in our communique it is clear that it is up to the countries to pick up nuclear or not. It is optional. There is no push for the countries to make use of nuclear. If the countries opt to use nuclear power, we have highlighted the benefits of that, and it is up to countries definitely to make their own strategies. In terms of energy security, it is still a core mission, and it will be a core mission for the IEA: oil security, gas security, electricity security, and our governments now enhance this our energy security mandate by asking us to look after the critical minerals security. It is a very important task, and we will look at it carefully. The OPEC, we have not criticized anybody, and we have only mentioned that if the oil prices continue to go up, and if we take steps to push the prices up, it may well lead to provide upward pressure to the inflationary pressures, and this may in turn create challenges for the already fragile global economic growth. It is up to those countries to decide what they are going to do. But what we also remind that this year's oil demand growth, which we expect about 1.2 million barrels per day, will be more than met by the growth coming from the Americas, namely US, Canada, Brazil, and Guyana. For the third question, what happens if there's a change in the government in this country or another country? So I believe when we look at the fundamentals of the clean energy transition, I don't expect that the political changes of a president or a minister or anything else will be able to stop the clean energy transition. The economic and technological dynamics are very strong. Industrial policy dynamics are very strong. And I believe the clean energy transition will continue to move fast, whoever the next president or the minister or this or that country will be. And I stop here.
Thank you very much. And I think both ministers would like to comment. Mr. Ryan would.
Yeah, just very briefly on the first question. We got a message today of support from Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. And I think he's shown incredible leadership, particularly in the whole climate and other areas. I remember at the September, the United Nations General Assembly special meeting on climate action, he made the case there, you have to get together and you have to compromise. And a text that we've agreed today obviously may include paragraphs that some countries may feel uncomfortable with, but that doesn't mean you can't agree the overall. And it's really critical that we did come together in a time when multilateralism is at risk in so many different areas, that we are agreed. We are agreed in the clear, broad direction that we're going. And it's not forcing any one country in terms of its fuel mix, but it is absolutely saying we all have to go to decarbonise. And I think so his words inspire a lot of good politics in my mind as to how we get cooperation on energy.
And maybe a couple more words on this very subject. I used to be the Minister of Industry until last Friday. I'm now both industry and energy. And I've been speaking with French industrials and European industrials and global industrials for the last 24 months. And when I asked them, what do you need to make sure that you are on track and that we get rid of net emissions by 2050, they say one thing. We need low carbon energy like there's no tomorrow, and we need it cheap. And I think all the countries have their own views of getting there, but it's about time we just get there. So some countries will get there one way. We know that Germany, for instance, is going full on renewables. We've decided to go, let's put it that way, 50-50. We're going to do nuclear and renewables. The most important thing, I think Eamon just said it, let's just do it. Let's do it together. Let's make sure that we both together get on that track, get actions, get money, make sure that private money is with us so that we move on. And I think the time for ideological wars is over. Now it's the time for action. And I think what we're showing today, it's the first multilateral meeting after the COP that we're ready to act. 80% of global consumption is ready to act. And 35% of global consumption, which are the members of the EIA, is already acting.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions from in the room? Yes, then that woman there. Yep, great.
Hello, Maluka Kitamets from Nikkei. Thank you for taking my questions. I have two questions related to the potential membership of India. The first one is, how is India going to contribute to the energy security, which is the mandate of IEA? Is it by participating in the oil reserve, or are there any other aspects to this? And the second question is, will the discussion be based on understanding that this is going to be a one-time exception for India, which is a non-OECD member, or will this open a new pathway for other non-OECD countries such as Brazil and China? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've actually had quite a few questions in the Zoom as well about India, so perhaps I'll mention those and then we just have a round on India rather than mixing up with other things. So there was a question from Anadolu Agency, Nuran, asking what is the significance in energy terms of the IEA starting discussions with India on full membership. And then there was also one from Context, Anna Hubert, asking about the relationship between OECD membership and IEA membership in the context of India, of the talks with India, and how could that change? Is the debate needed on the link between OECD membership and IEA membership? So a few different angles on the India question, and perhaps Minister Ryan, if you'd like to go first.
I recall in Dubai, I was involved in the climate negotiations, and when it got difficult in the last day, the first text wasn't acceptable. We had to pull it round and back, and I'll never forget that there was a certain moment when a number of countries started coming into the room on seeking a solution together, including the likes of Brazil or US and others. And that inclusive approach to what we're doing on climate, the biggest challenge of our time, is really important. I think we were able to get agreement in Dubai because the US and China in sunny lands only a month previously had similarly agreed that we need to make cooperation. And I would agree, I would say, give another example of this. I think India's leadership of the G20 last year, when along with the IEA having the key role, promoting this tripling of renewables, doubling of efficiency is another example of what Roland says absolutely right. We need to really change things now. It's not political, ideological, it's urgent action stations. And if that's a divide and leave out or exclude, then I think it presents real challenges. Yes, the IEA and all the mechanisms here will have to be discussed. But I'm long enough. I was an energy minister from 2007 to 2011. I remember 2008, there was a special meeting in Paris with Henry Kissinger and all the great and good. And we were talking then about including other countries like India and China. I think the world is now in a much more perilous position, and that forces us to be more ambitious in how we cooperate on energy and on climate.
Thank you, Minister Ryan. Minister Liskio, did you...
Well, maybe 4 words. We cannot not engage with India. I mean, it's a very important part of the global consumption. It's also very important and more important global supplier of energies, both the old ones and the new ones. We have to engage with them. So there's a clear mandate from the governing board for the Director General under the auspices of the governing board to engage in this conversation. We'll see how and where it leads to. But we certainly are willing to move forward because it's, as we said again, we all have to get our acts together and act further and more. And India is a very important actor.
Excellent. Thank you. Dr. Birol.
I just wanted to add a technical, perhaps information here, is that India, just in terms of the oil security, India's the oil security measures and what they have been doing up to now is much beyond that many of us may believe. Maybe it is not at the level that some of the IEA member countries have, but not very far from there. And as of today, we are going to start the discussions with India. It's a journey, it's a path, it's a process. But the important thing is, as ministers mentioned, it is also expressed in our communique. There is a strong intention on both sides, from the IEA side and from the Indian side, to have a very good, very happy process and a good result from that. Because if we want to deserve our name, International Energy Agency, we have to work with the countries like India, Brazil, and others, and to have them as a member of the IEA family. So it is, in my view, a very important step taken by our governments as a response to the request from the Indian government, specifically from Dr. Jay Shankar, the foreign minister, and I am, as head of the IEA, I am very, very happy with this result.
Thank you very much. Were there any more questions in the room? A couple more. The gentleman from Kyoto, I believe.
Dr. Birol, congratulations on 50 years of IEA, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask you. So I'm Atsushi Miyake from Kyoto News Agency, Japan. I have 2 questions. Because of your great leadership, since 2015, the IEA has expanded its activities and increased the international presence. And on the other hand, I think that rapid expansion of IEA activity has brought difficulties due to a lack of staff and funding. How do you plan to overcome this problem and prevent decline in quality? And the second question is that what role do you think the IEA can play in 10 years time when we celebrate IEA 60 years anniversary? Thank you.
And then was there a question over here? Yep.
Hello, Anka Gurzu with Cypher News. The question for Dr. Birol. In light of everything that was discussed today and the intersection of energy security with climate security, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the Biden administration's recent decision to pause new LNG terminals to measure their climate impact. Do you agree with that? Thank you.
Thanks very much. And then we've got a lot of questions in the Zoom. We can't cover them all, unfortunately, but I'll try and just put a couple out there that I think 1 or 2 of the ministers and Dr. Birol may want to address. One is from Jonathan Leake of The Telegraph. who says, given that global gas demand is set to rise for years to come and oil demand is rising and coal use remains high, what chance is there of meeting the Paris climate targets? And then also a question from America Hernandez of Reuters, asking about how we respond to criticism criticism or people questioning the projection that demand for oil, gas, and coal will peak by 2030. Do we think the data and projections are reliable? And then quickly from Paul Messad of Euractiv, kind of talking about the challenge ahead, the trillions of investment that you were saying are needed. Have you already received any proof of commitments, or is this just an announcement at this stage? And he would also like to know more about the new roles that the IEA will take on after the Ministerial, particularly in terms of critical minerals. Perhaps, again, Minister Ryan, would you like to go first?
Yeah. We had a very interesting presentation from David Turk, the Assistant Secretary in the Department of Energy in the US, doing a very good overview of where we're at. And it's true, in a whole variety of different areas, we're not going fast enough, particularly in the hard-to-abate sectors, in the scaling up of real industrial heat and other solutions. But there were a number of green dots on the measurement of progress. And in the likes of the rollout of PV, there's a revolution taking hold. Even in sunny Ireland, not sunny Ireland, cloudy Ireland.
It is, sometimes.
It's taken off.
2 times a day.
All over the world, it's exploding in popularity and impact. That won't stop. Similarly with the rollout of EVs, it's the better cars. It's not stopping. One minister after another acknowledging that today. So yes, I believe it can be, fossil fuel demand has to peak this decade, and I believe it will, because there's a better system, there's a better alternative. Just on the 4.5 trillion mentioned, that is just taking what the IEA does well, which is an in-depth, detailed analysis. If we're to meet the net zero path, it's a scientifically assessed and based figure. That is the scale of finance that we're going to need. And of that, 2.2 trillion to 2.8 will have to be in emerging and developing economies. It's not rocket science to work that figure out. That will have to come from a whole variety of sources. We will not be all concessional finance, ODA or others. That has to be largely in private investment, married with public financing by all means to help de-risk the investment and to unblock the obstacles we have at the moment, particularly for investment in emerging and developing countries. So that's what we need to spend. That's the scale we need to make sure we deliver. In my mind, we have 2 years, as I said, to match the mechanisms for doing that with the new NDCs, the nationally declared contributions, that we're going to have to present as part of the Paris Climate Agreement. And that's doable with political will. And I believe the story here today as well, as it exists in Dubai, that political will is growing.
Thank you, Minister Ryan. I think Minister Leskill wanted to say
yeah, I'll just add a few words on the questions on global gas demand and so on. And maybe explain what we've done in France to try to address this massive question, which is, are we doing enough? What we've done is every minister who's involved, so industry, energy, transportation, housing and farming, to make it short, had to produce a plan to make it work. We all had to. So how much biomass, how much transformation of steel plants, how much transformation of aluminium plants, how many cars do we need on the roads to drive clean so that we make sure that we are where we want to be by 2030 and 2050. And the short answer is yes, it works. You can do it. And it's going to cost, and it's going to cost even more in emerging countries. But if you do that bottom-up work, you actually show that it's possible. And we've done it so bottom-up that at the end of the day, what I did as an industry minister is that I signed 50 contracts with 50 factories in France that together amount for 60% of the global emission of French industry. 50 contracts, if they're respected, will get rid of 60% of French industrial emission by 2050. And you know what? We have the technology, we know how much it costs, we need a lot of power, low carbon, cheap, we need a lot of hydrogen, and we're going to need a lot of talent. That's all we need. So let's just do it.
Thank you. And Dr. Birol?
Okay, just to finish, perhaps here, the first question from Kyoto IES, the countries are growing, IES impact is growing, credibility is growing, but the budget stays the same if we are able to do with it. I think this is the right question, but I am the wrong person. I think you should ask the question to the ministers. And if you ask me, perhaps I would definitely say it would have been much better if our budget wouldn't remain flat since 10 years. It would be, our impact could have been even higher, and some of my colleagues could enjoy the weekends, I would say, including our colleague next to me. Now, what will happen in 10 years of time? I wish, I mean, this is wishful thinking, but I wish some of the issues we are discussing here, membership here, the other countries in Asia, Latin America, would be with us all the time. And I wish we would make major steps in terms of addressing climate change and giant steps there. And I wish also that the geopolitics would be a bit away from the energy business. Energy remains as an economic sector, not a part of the geopolitics today. Question about the Biden administration's recent decision on the LNG pause. Of course, it is a decision of a government and based on, as they say, on commercial grounds. I can only tell you that our analysis show, starting from 2025, there will be already a huge wave of new LNG capacity coming to markets. So in the next 2025 towards 2030, the amount of new LNG capacity coming to markets will be 50% of what we have built in the last 30 years. A huge growth, and a big chunk of it is coming already from United States, followed by Qatar, and there might be some commercial considerations on that, in addition to the environmental issues. The question from the Telegraph, I think it is about and also from Reuters, if I am not wrong, the peak oil and gas, is it? Yes, our numbers show that the oil, it is the most discussed issue. We said almost, I think, 6 months ago, the global oil demand will peak before 2030. So I want to make it clear, there are two reasons for that. And this is with the current policies. One, we are seeing a major electrification of the transportation sector everywhere, but including the major markets such as the Europe, China, and the United States. And the second, most importantly, this is very important, dear colleagues, understanding China. In the last 10 years, more than 2/3 of the global oil demand growth came from China only. Okay? And Chinese economic growth in the last 10 years was over 6% per year. And Chinese economy is slowing down. There's a consensus on that, including the Chinese government, and Chinese economy structure is changing, going to a lighter economy from an energy-intensive economic growth. This would slow down the Chinese oil demand prospects. So putting these two things together, we expect the oil demand will peak before 2030, just based on this technological and economic grounds. Having said that, two things. First, they meant criticized, but it was criticized or not agreed by a small number of oil producers, their spokespersons, and maybe I would also suggest all of you to look at the very fact that many of the oil companies, major oil companies in Europe, in the United States and elsewhere, also say the global oil demand will peak before 2030, full stop. Mm-hmm. Then a last question about the investment. If anybody talk about they are going to put investment on the table at the IEA Ministerial, no, this is not a meeting that the investments are put on the table, but countries have discussed and came up with the solutions and the suggestions how we can facilitate the badly needed investment levels that the Minister Ryan has eloquently put on the table, especially those in the developing countries. Finally, critical minerals, what are we going to do? We are going to do a few things. As many of you know, we publish oil market review, gas market review. We are going to publish regularly the critical mineral market review to look at the different developments in the critical minerals. We will look at the demand, supply, investment, and the prices to provide transparency. Second, we will make stress tests for different countries in terms of critical mineral availability, how they are going to cope, how they can cope in the context of tightness in the markets. And third, we are, as I said, inspired by our the oil security mechanism. We are also going to discuss on a voluntary basis of a safety net and the critical minerals among our member countries. So these are some points, and may I also thank again the ministers once again, and I would also highlight that in my view, these tough topics are discussed with 50 governments around the world is another sign that the multilateralism still works, does work, and provide results, as you see in our wonderful communique. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. And thank you to Minister Ryan, Minister Lescure. Thank you to all the journalists here and in the Zoom. That really is all we got time for. There's another meeting that the principals all have to run to. So for those of you watching online, you can find more information about the Ministerial, the communique, the press release, videos of the events on our website, iea.org. So please do take a look. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Thank you. Merci.